Hey everyone, my name is Eric. Joining me is Abir. And yeah, we're going to be talking about TensorFlow today. So we'll start with a general overview of TensorFlow, go into an overview of machine learning as well, see what TensorFlow can help you with. And then we'll jump into Abir's portion, which is actually coding hands-on TensorFlow practice. So let's get started. So here's a good quote that summarizes machine learning. Machine learning is an application of artificial intelligence, AI, that provides systems the ability to automatically learn and improve from experience without being explicitly programmed. So basically, it's like the machine or the system learns to do tasks by itself. So usually when you code, you write the rules, you collect data as input, and then you output answers or functionality. But with machine learning, this is a little bit reversed. So data goes into the model, answers go into the model, and then the model determines the rules, the actual code, the functionality. And yeah, some machine learning models do regression. They use data and produce predictions. Others, as we saw, produce rules. And this is when the model has actually been trained. It uses the data and the rules that are generated to produce predictions. And there are many different uses for machine learning. There's computer vision, which is like seeing, being able to understand visual stimuli. Here's an example of that, being able to differentiate between dogs and cupcakes or muffins. They do look kind of similar, and for us it's easy, but for computers you have to actually train them. Classification, which is kind of categorizing things into different groups. There's regression prediction, which is like predicting values, so like predicting housing costs or medical costs or stock market prices, things like that. There's reinforcement learning, in which you're actively monitoring a model that's being trained and kind of telling it what's right, what's wrong, until the model decides for itself how it should act. There's clustering, which is similar to classification, except that the machine learning model kind of separates the data on its own. You don't really give it the groups, but the machine learning model determines the groupings for data. There's dimensionality reduction, which kind of simplifies data. And there's simulation. And this is pretty interesting. You could run like a whole simulation on like the human genome, for example, and kind of simulate different diseases and see which genes help combat those diseases. Really interesting. And this down here is just an example of regression. So you probably have seen something like this, a linear equation in your life. So machine learning model would be able to do this, but on a way more advanced scale. Yeah. And here's a good graphic that kind of shows the whole taxonomy of machine learning. There is unsupervised learning, supervised learning, reinforcement learning, and each of these are broken down into many different categories: classification, clustering, all these different things, game AI, really cool stuff. So let's talk about TensorFlow in particular. TensorFlow is the program behind the scenes. It allows you to create neural networks, and it's a fully end-to-end platform since it comes with a lot of different useful library functions. You could use it throughout the entire pipeline of machine learning. It's also free, open source, and it's available on a whole bunch of different platforms. And you could even put it into like a mobile app that you're working on and then call that model from the mobile app. And so some people, when they train a machine learning model, they put it directly into their app, but others put it on a server. And then on that server, you can call that server with your data, and the server would run the model and return the data. And although that's a little bit slower, usually that method is preferred because it puts less of a strain on the client's devices, and it allows them to, get useful predictions without needing like super strong hardware to run the model. But yeah, there are pros and cons for different approaches. And this is kind of like what TensorFlow looks like. And don't worry if you don't understand each little detail here. But the main goal of this whole session actually is to just give you an overview of the different steps of machine learning. So one of the most important steps is, even before any of this, is pre-processing the data and getting it ready for machine learning. Then you create a model. So in this case, they're creating a sequential model with different layers. Then they compile, which is like prepare the model, and they train the model. Fit is used interchangeably with train. It means the same thing. And then they evaluate the model using the input and labels. Labels are basically like the answers. So like a label for the muffin example would be like a muffin versus a dog for different images. All right. So now we're going to use a tool called Quick Labs, which is really useful because it allows us to do hands-on practice in a whole bunch of different categories. So the one we'll be focusing on today is TensorFlow, and I'll show you how to get to that. So I'll paste the links here into the chat. So what we're going to do is, and it's advised actually to use incognito mode so that you don't kind of mess up your accounts, because you'll be given a new account when you go to this website. So what we're going to do is go to this link. And then once we're here, we're going to scroll down to our quest. And today our quest is this one, Baseline Data ML AI. So once you get there, just hit enroll, and you're going to enter the second thing that we pasted, which is this code. Once you enter that, hit that, you should be able to access this. And if you don't, feel free to let me know and I could try to help you out. And yeah, with that, I'll hand it off to Abir, who's gonna guide us through the first lab.
All right, here, I'll quickly share.
Oh, I should make you a co-host, actually.
Yeah, appreciate it.
It's a good idea.
All right, so let's see. Okay, so can you guys see?
Yeah, I can see your screen.
All right, so first off, a brief overview about the lab. So we're going to be working on a virtual machine, and we're going to be using what's called a Jupyter notebook. And we're going to first prepare the data and our model both locally, well, at least the model locally, and we're going to prepare the data and the model on the cloud as well. We're going to be working with this cloud ML engine that Google has. So, and the goal of this lab is to, it's essentially a classification, one of the applications that Eric mentioned earlier. So we'll be working with US Census data, and we're going to essentially binarily classify whether data points are likely to have a income of less than or equal than $50,000 or greater than $50,000. So why don't we hop in? So we hit Start Lab. Gotta. Okay, so I'm gonna launch with a credit. So this part will take a few minutes. It's going to get ready some lab resources, and I believe it gives us like our own login. We don't use our own credentials. It prepares us credentials, so we'll end up using that. And we have some instructions here, so I would recommend when you get the credentials, it gives you a link as well, I believe. So go and create another incognito tab and open it there. And then maybe split screen, so you have the instructions on one window and then the, okay. So yeah, here we have our username and our password. So we'll open the console, and what we'll do is we'll keep that here. Okay, now we're gonna put our username in. That's an email address that Google provides us. Next. And then we have our password. And we're going to go ahead and accept this. And this isn't really our account, so we can just confirm. Okay. And just to make sure, you guys can see both the windows, right?
Yep, we can see both.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, now we have all the instructions we need right under, I believe it's launched AI platform notebooks. So you're going to scroll down quite a bit until you get to artificial intelligence. And you're going to click on the AI platform. and you're going to go to, I believe it's notebooks. Yep, notebooks. All right, now what we need to do is so here we're going to create our virtual machine. So we're going to click New Instance and TensorFlow Enterprise, and we want to select Enterprise and the latest version of that. And we're going to do without GPU. Okay, now for our region, we have instructions to do central 1. And I think any zone is fine. And it automatically selects a zone within that region. Okay, so we don't have to worry about anything else here. So we click create. And it'll probably take a few minutes. And then we'll be able to click on this right here.
Yeah, so while this provisions, it can take a few minutes. I guess we can talk about like Jupyter notebooks in general. So notebooks are really cool because they allow you, and you'll see this in a few minutes, to run like little snippets of Python code one at a time. And that will allow you to kind of really like separate your different steps of machine learning. So there's the pre-processing code, the training code, the prediction code, all of that nicely stratified. So it's a nice organized way that data scientists use to do machine learning.
Yeah, and also another neat thing is, so say you run a snippet of code and say you need to like view what the data looks like. Say if it's like something that can fit in a data frame or a table, you can physically see that right underneath the line of code and then move on to the next snippet of code, which is really neat. Whereas having to run it each time and then check the console, and sometimes you get errors and another snippet which isn't part of that. So it's really neat. All right. So if it stops loading, you want to click Open Jupyter Lab. I'll take you to a new window. Okay, now we're going to scroll down a little bit in the instructions and we're going to open the terminal. All right, so they give us this command to run. We're cloning a repository from Google Cloud. Okay, and hit enter. And then in our directory, we'll see some files pop up. Yep, so they've popped up here. Okay, now we're gonna go into this training data analyst folder, and yeah, so now what we want to do is okay, so self-paced lab, sorry about that. Okay, AI platform quick start, and we're going to open a notebook. And we have our terminal in another tab, and we have the notebook open over here. Okay, so I know the instructions say to like clear all the cells in the notebook. I'm not sure where exactly you go to do that.
Yeah, what I did was just rerun everything like one by one. I don't think
Yeah,
you really
same
need
here.
to clear it, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I guess this part you can really go at your own pace. We have the code, and in between the code lines, we have the actual instructions of what you're doing. So I guess I'll just give you a brief overview. So for the first part, you're preparing the data for training and all. Yep. And also here we're getting some, this is, I guess, what you would, how the, I believe, neural network architecture will actually look. And there's some other specifications for actually creating the model here. And then we're going to be doing the training. And then it goes to using your model that you've trained. And then you can actually deploy it on cloud data. I believe Google Cloud has a large data set of US Census data. So yeah, and along the way, it will give you instructions to like go back to this page over here. And often periodically, you're going to go through and you're going to check your progress. If you've done everything correctly, a check mark will appear here, a green check mark. And yeah, it'll tell you when to do that and when you're ready to do that. And yeah, once you're done with all the check marks, there's a little bit of a small quiz. It's pretty simple. And once you've done all of that, you've completed this portion of the quest. So I guess we can have you guys work through it. And along the way, if there's any questions or anything you need, just feel free to ask. Also, I'm not sure if I said this, but to essentially run it, we have a toolbar up here. So this arrow right here is to run the cell that we've selected. So that's just doing some imports, and you can even click it to go past the comments. And yeah, there'll be like a loading thing pop up here if that's still loading, and sometimes something will appear in like a mini console underneath. So
yeah, and two more things I wanted to mention was if you see a little asterisk next to like a cell, that means it's loading. So don't be surprised if like the next cell that you click play on doesn't load right away, because it's waiting for the other one to finish.
Yeah, and later on, some cells will take like a few minutes to load.
Yeah, and I think there are like two sections in the code where you have to paste in your project ID.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it'll tell you when to do that. So as you're finishing up, and take your time, I'm just gonna go over like some of the free stuff that you get by doing this. So since you completed like the first lab, you should now have like a free like 1 month subscription to Quick Labs. And there are like a whole bunch of different topics there, like TensorFlow, Firebase. I think there's Firebase. There's a bunch of Google Cloud Platform stuff. So yeah, you can feel free to look through those. And once you do more quests, I think you get like progress towards certifications, which are really useful for employment. So yeah, you should have that free for a month. And if you don't, feel free to contact us and I can fix that up. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of different stuff here. Machine learning, BigQuery. And yeah, here are the specific certification skill badges. So if you enroll in these in particular, these are like directly mapped towards certifications. So yeah, I guess unless anyone has any other questions, yeah, we can wrap it up. All right. Yeah, thanks so much for coming, guys. Really appreciate it. And yeah, feel free to message us again if any errors come up.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Sure.
Yeah.
See you.